This video is intended for level artists, directors, DPs, operators, anybody that's going to want to interface with this part of the production pipeline. So that means that if you're going to be working in this realm and you want to learn how to set up a project with the VP Toolkit for Previs, this is your video. Okay, so let's take a look at this level. So this is a level that we downloaded from the marketplace and then did some modifications to. This is something very similar to what you'd generally get if you were an operator and a level artist, had to do minor things to a level and then used it for production. So in this level, all of the world assets are on this level, which is just restaurant. This is the original level that was there. We've just modified it. We've gone through, we've changed the lighting and changed different level aspects to it. And then we have the background metahumans. You can see those. And then we have our pre-pro actors. So our pre-pro actors are everything that is going to live in the general stage area. So while we're doing pre-pro, we can just make sure that these are, represented and look good. So one thing to note is you generally want to have it so that your pre-pro actors are set to a streaming method blueprint. This will make it so that when end display fires up, they just don't even load. But when we get through this process, we're also going to add these to an end display layer that makes them hidden. So also in this level, there is a level sequence. This is controlling our main previs talent here, and it is also controlling the background extras. This was a combination of animations and metahumans. Also want to note that these have very low LODs, so that when you set up metahumans for this type of previs, you just want to make sure that you're paying attention to their level of detail, and then they become reasonably manageable in a production as background extras. Our main talent here has much higher LODs, and that's just so that when we do camera stills, it looks a little better. Along with this project, there is also 2 cameras in here. These cameras were set by production, and they are to tell generally where the shot's going to be to direct the art and to know where you need extras and generally to just get a view as the level was built. So I recommend going through your project and doing this workflow that we're currently doing as soon as possible so that your art direction is complemented by where your stage is going to be, how it's going to be rendered, and what shots you're getting. So we'll just play the level sequence here through the wide. And you can see she sits down and then starts having a conversation. Pretty cool. So now we're going to put the VP Toolkit plugin into this project and set it up for the stage. To do that, I'm going to close the project. So when you do this process, you're going to want to get the information from your stage. So if the stage that you're working with is using the VP Toolkit system, they'll be able to send you their plugin or their end display config. And then you'll be able to use that end display config in the lighter version of our plugin, the Previs version, or you'll be able to use that in just the full version if they send you the entire plugin. So now that's going to have all of the settings and the configuration of the stage already built into it, and we'll be able to use that to previs. In my other videos, I show how to set that all up and how to, get your whole entire stage calibrated and work with it through the operator training. So if you're interested in that, just go check that out. For now, I'm going to copy the stage that we actually set up in that video series. So this would be a stage that you'd be getting from the studio that you're working with. So in your project, you'll want to create a plugins folder, and then we're going to paste that into the plugins folder. Okay, once your project has restarted, you're going to go to your plugin content. So if you go down here, you'll actually see plugins folder and then VP Toolkit. If you don't see this folder, you may have to go to settings and then show plugin content. I usually enable show engine content as well. So if we select the VP Toolkit and go down to widgets, and then we're just going to right click the Frustum widget and then run editor utility widget at the top there. So mine automatically populated above the screen because that's generally where I like to have it. But you can just take it, it'll probably come out all big, and then you can just take it like this. And then we're going to do the same thing for the stage widget. And then I usually like to have that right here. So once you've got those where you like them, we're going to set up a level system. So if you go to your stage settings, which is this little chair here, and then go down to project level manager, and then we're going to just name this. So I'm going to name this, I think this is SCL VP Toolkit. So we'll say SCL form. So that's just going to be the project name. This could be your production. This was a production with Form Studios. So, and this is their stage that we're going to be integrating. So this could be based on the script. If you have different scenes or locations or any type of naming structure that has already been created by production, you want to just have that represented here so that you can keep track with everybody. I'm actually going to create a new stage level. A lot of times you may get a stage level from the studio that you're working with. Here you can actually copy that stage level, create a level system with it. I'm going to create a new stage level. We have different template configs already created. 1 Frustum, 2 Frustum, and default view, no Frustum, already set up so that if you're setting up a new project as an end display operator, you can just select one. But we're going to select user config because right now we have the studio's config file. That's what we have to represent their stage. And then we're going to select our user config. I want to use the form stage 2060. I have a ton of test configs in there from experimenting with my own things. And then I'm going to just generate this level by hitting this little circle button. So now if we go to our levels tab, just in case in the earlier part we did go into the levels tab, but just in case you need to find your levels tab, you can just go to window and levels, and then I usually drag mine over here. So you can see that it created a persistent level, which is our project level, and then it created our stage level. So what we want to do is we want to now add the environments that we are going to use for our production. So I know that it's restaurant, that's our level, and then we have the metahumans background, add our metahumans, and then we have props and candles, and then we have the pre-pro actors. It looks like I'm going to have to rebake. Okay, so once you have built your level configuration and added your environments, we're going to want to bring our stage to us. It is just somewhere else in the level. If your level's built at 0, it might potentially be right in front of you, but mine is just off in the abyss. So if I want to select my stage, I can actually go over to this stage level icon. And if I select that, that should automatically select your config there, your stage config. To snap it to our position in the stage widget, there's a snap stage to view. And then that will automatically just snap your stage to your location on the floor. Generally, before I do that, I like to set the stage or deck height. This is going to be the stage that we're putting our props and talent on. This is to lift them up off the ground and then give us more clearance at the bottom of the LED wall. This makes it so you can use wider lenses and back up the camera more before seeing the bottom of the LED wall. This also removes some of the need for prop floor, because directly behind talent, it drops off and becomes virtual anyway. So our stage deck height is 23 centimeters. Let me just make sure that is set, because the snap stage to view tool will place your stage based on that deck height, is level with what you would consider your floor on your set. I want to position it a little better. I tend to like to have my virtual objects kind of poking through the screen a little bit. You generally don't want to have virtual objects coming through your screen too much into the physical space, because you start to run into this issue where the object has the wrong depth of field, because the physical camera can only render the physical depth of field to the wall. So if something starts to come into that area, it will have entirely too much depth of field on it, and it starts to become very noticeable. You start to see this in situations where people are filming subway scenes or things that are supposed to be close to the talent, but depth of field wise, they're actually further away. This is just something to take into consideration when placing your LED wall in the virtual world or doing your set design. I'm going to get these chairs to barely be popping through, and I can actually see that my plant is popping through here. So now if you're starting off here with a fresh stage, you're probably going to have your foreground previs prop objects or assets show up in your end display projection. To get rid of that, we have, you can click on the previs toolbar and then you can see add to hidden layer. So if we just select all of the things that we want to add to that layer, you can do this one at a time if you want to, but I feel comfortable just kind of grabbing all this stuff here. This will make it so that whatever you select won't get rendered in the end display projection. You can also manually go into end display and adjust these settings. There's more control, but this is just a quick feature that we have in our plugin. So you can actually see that big gray square there is the wall. So I'm going to just select that as well. And I'm just going to hit add to hidden layer. And so that's going to take all those objects and add them to a new layer. Here's the layers tab. You can see the VPT previs layer. So if you need to just select all of those actors again, you can just hit select actors. And then if you wanted to remove them from that layer, you can just select them again and hit the X. But I'm going to leave them in that layer. And then to hide the previs tool again, you can just select it again. So now let's start looking for our camera angles, the actual fun part here. I'm going to start with our wide shot. This is the shot that we're introducing the world with. We actually have a little cinema camera here where the director wanted the initial camera to be. So the quickest way for me to place my frustum camera at this same position is I'm actually going to right click it and hit snap view to object. That's going to put us in the perspective of that camera. And then I'm going to select my frustum camera. And then I'm going to right click that and hit snap object to view. And then that's going to place our frustum camera in that same position as that camera. So now we want to match the settings of that camera. And if you're not doing that workflow and you want to just find the shot, you can select your frustum camera and then hit the pilot selected actor button up here. And then you can just manually find the shot here. And to eject from piloting it, you just top left corner of your viewport here, you just want to hit eject. And you can also move this camera around manually if you want. You can adjust it like that. This also may be something that you might have currently tracking. So a lot of times when I'm placing markers like this might even actually be on a stage where we're prevising this, and all of the same techniques that we're using here should work properly live on a pre-light as well. To make sure that we're seeing our screen, what I'm going to do is select the end display config. You can hit the little chair here on the stage widget and it will select it, or you can just find it in your level. If you go to your details window and scroll down and go to IC VFX camera, we can actually put a inner frustum border. So if you enable that, you'll see a border around what the camera can see on the preview representation of your LED wall. I'm going to set this to 2. So if we have the camera partly off of our LED wall, we can start to see that that camera angle is not going to work. So this is going to help us tech viz through this. So if I play my animation here, I can see this is the shot. Okay, this is the right angle, or at least this is what we're going to start with. So once we found a general good area that we plan to film in, we're going to set a location marker. So if you see on the stage widget, there's a little location icon here. Just click on that. This is the locations menu. We're just going to hit the little plus button to add a location. And then I'm just going to call this location 1 and then just wide shot. And then I'm going to say talent walks in and sits down wide. And then we can just add that and it'll show up here. If we click on this location, it will select the in-level actor that's there. So you can actually get into here. If you need to adjust something after the fact, you can just do it in the actual actor here. If you want to load this location marker, say we move the stage configuration and we want to bring it back to where it was, we can just hit this load location button right here. And then that will snap it back. Currently right now, the load location button will also snap your viewport to the stage. So if you're on the other side of the level and you want to load this location, your viewport will actually just snap right to it. There might be a feature to turn that on and off before the release. And then if you want to overwrite that location marker, so let's say that select our stage and then say I move this a little bit and then I want to update that location, I can actually hit this little overwrite location button and it will automatically set the location to wherever your stage is at. So now that we've got our location and general shot, let's just go through some camera settings and make sure that we've got everything set up correctly. So to get the shot that we wanted, we're going to use a 35mm. This is sometimes a conversation you want to have with your production to understand what lenses they're going to be using and make sure that the lenses are properly represented in these shots, because then when you're referencing back to them, just the field of view is correct and you know that you're going to get the same result on set as you are in previs. So I know that we're going to be using the 35mm. So the camera we're going to be using on set is the Komodo, and we're going to be shooting in 6K 16:9. And then we have color temperature, we have saturation for outer frustum and inner frustum, and then we have the exposure for the frustum camera and the other camera. So if we need to change the exposure for our shot, we can do that right here. So maybe I want this a little darker. 2.5 looks good. If you're getting a stage configuration or stage level that is already set up, you want to make sure that there's no additional features turned on, because if it's already set up for a studio, they may have the tracking enabled, the lens data, and all of that already enabled. So just make sure to turn them off, and turning them off shouldn't hurt any of their calibration or anything like that. And you can get to those through the menu here. Once we have all of our settings where we want them for our camera, we're going to drop a shot marker. So I'm just going to call this 1A, and then I'm just going to say talent walks in and sits down. And then I'm going to set this as a previs shot so that we can later be able to filter our shots. And then it's going to tell us right here the location that this shot is at. Make sure that you have your location marker already set so that you can just add this and it will be referenced here. So we'll add that, and then we can see all of our settings. If we click on the shot here, it will select it. If you're doing any type of level design, you may want to set up another viewport. I have one down here, and then you can change the perspective to be possibly that camera. And then if you need to do any level design or anything like that from that perspective, it's just easier. And then up here you can see it'll tell us what shot is loaded. Up here it will tell us the current shot. So if you want to, you could change the focal length here. So if you got more information on what the actual shot was going to be, or you wanted to just change the style of it based on doing previs, you can adjust that without having to go into it. If you click on the widget, it will select the shot itself, and then you can go into the settings of the shot and change anything that you'd like if you need to manually adjust any of your information or the location or any of the settings. This will actually, in the full version of our plugin for studios, this will actually keep all of the camera settings, including all of the stage settings, the format, the tracking, the lens data, your offsets, your color config. And then if you want to overwrite this camera, so let's say that we change a setting on our frustum camera, we change it to a 40mm, and we actually want to overwrite this camera settings because we say, okay, we now want to overwrite this camera. We can also overwrite the location marker. So if you have the same camera settings and you change the location marker, you can just overwrite the location marker, hit overwrite, and now that, hit refresh here, and we can see that that's now a 40mm. So I'm actually just going to turn that back to 35 because that's where I want my shot. So now we're going to do a shot for the other camera angle. I'm going to do the same technique I did before, where I just snap view to object, and then if we select our frustum camera and then snap object to view, that will snap our frustum camera to the position of the reference camera that was left for us in this level. It looks like our focus is a little off. We can actually set that here, so it's probably 500 centimeters away or so. That looks good. If you need to adjust any of the camera settings, you can also adjust them in the cinema camera here. This is the manual focus settings. You needed to see the focal plane of where it actually is to fine tune it. You can just select the draw focus plane. I believe this shot was also on the 35mm. We're starting to see off of our LED wall here. So that means that probably this position of the wall is not going to work. We're going to have to relocate the position of the wall. So that's actually going to snap the frustum camera as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit the snap stage to view again, and it will place the LED wall directly in front of me. Remember, if we need to bring back that other stage, all we need to do is hit this load location marker button. Let's take our reference camera that was left in the level for us, and let's snap view to object, and then select our frustum camera, and then snap object to view. Now we're back in position. So this looks pretty good. You can see that we're not seeing the bottom of the LED wall. We're also filming in the volume. I'm going to add another location marker. So I'm going to name this location 2. Again, it's in the locations tab, which you can just click on this little icon, and then I hit the add location marker button here. So I'm going to just rename this to location 2, and we'll just call this mid shot. And then also in here, I'm going to just write something about we're going to have to change the stage position pretty heavily here and actually move our talent. Now, this is something that is going to happen a lot with these shoots while you move around and get your coverage. Bringing that up to production and making sure that's well documented is just going to save your life on set. Stage rotation here, and then just add that location marker. And then I like our shot here. I think this lines up with what our director would want. We're on the 35mm, we're in focus, we have the correct camera. So let's add that as another shot, and this is going to be 1B, and then we're just going to say the same thing we did before, which is fine. Appears to be texting. I generally like to keep the shot references a little shorter. just because there's a little less room in the notes section here. So it starts to overlap if you make them too long. So we now have our two different shots. They are both previs. If you want to switch from production to previs, say you have a lot of shots, you can filter them here. That's just so that you can see one category at a time. Okay, so using these two shots that I made, I'm going to show you how to export stills now. So generally I like to go into my stage config, which again, you can just hit this little chair and it will select your stage config. Sometimes it gets lost in the level. And then if you scroll all the way down and under the rendering tab, you'll see actor hidden in game. You kind of want to know when that's on and when that's off, because you may want to use the actual preview to see where your wall is for the tech viz. So once you select your cameras, you'll no longer see in their little viewport preview, or if you pilot them, you click in somewhere in your level and hit the G key, you'll no longer see the LED wall stage there. So I'm going to select our wide shot, and I'm actually going to see, I'm not truly happy with the way that this looks. I wasn't paying too much attention to it. So I'm just going to select it, and once you've selected the camera, if you hit spacebar, you can change the angle that it moves at. So I'm just going to adjust this a little bit here. I also noticed that I made the wrong name here. So this is actually a mid shot. 1B is a mid shot. And then if I hit refresh, that'll update on the UI here. So now to export my wide shot, if I just click on the previous toolbar and I hit export screenshot, it will automatically pilot it and then export a screenshot. And then in the bottom right corner, you can go down here. I really like using this method because it is now labeled whatever your shot was. So now it's much easier to keep track of your virtual storyboarding. And then it'll pilot that and then jump back into game. Click on the link and you'll see your two different shots here. Now you can use these for storyboarding and for tech visiting your shots. But another thing that you can do is you can also sequence your shots on a level sequence. So if you want to export them as a movie, we'll just add a new level sequence here. So you'll just want to make a level sequence folder, and then we'll just go in there and we'll name this 1B mid shot dolly, and then save that level sequence. So if you right click and then add sequences track, and then just hit the little plus button, and then we can select our background actors. As we go through our shot, you'll see the background actors do their thing. I'm going to create a new reference shot for this and just name it mid shot dolly. So we have a clean reference camera to work with. And I'm going to select that reference camera and then drag it into my level sequence here. So now in your sequencer, you'll see your camera. You will automatically be piloting that camera. So what we want to do is we want to adjust the transform. For this shot, I want to be a little tighter on talent. Do the landing first, and then I'm going to back out to our wide shot. So during this, I want to get a little closer, and then move to our ending shot. So this shot's going to be in the other wall configuration. So I'm actually just going to load our original shot because I can see that I'm seeing off the LED wall here. Load that shot. Don't mind the frustum, that will just go away if you hit G on your keyboard, since we hit the actor hidden in game. So that's going to be our landing shot. So I'm going to take the location, the transform, and hit the plus button, and that's going to drop the transform there. And then I'm going to find my first shot. So we're actually going to start the shot around right here, I think, is when we'll actually cut to it. Okay, and then once I found my starting shot, I'm going to add keys to the timeline. And then now if we hit spacebar, we can see our shot. Very simple shot. You could add multiple reference shots to this sequence if you wanted. I'll put a link in the description for a good video on render settings and rendering out a sequence. Once you're done your previs session, I recommend doing a level snapshot. So if you go to the stage widget and then this little mountain icon over here, little level icon, this is the level snapshot section. You want to just add the name of the level snapshot. So we'll just call this the same as the shot and then add previs to the end of it. In the description, I'm just going to write session 1 of previs. And then when you add it, once you add it, you should get a little successful icon there. And then if you go back to the widget and hit refresh, you'll see your snapshot there. Now, if you want to load your snapshot after making a change, so let's say we selected our frustum camera and it got moved. We want to go back to where we were. We can just hit the load snapshot and then it'll pop everything back. It's a good way to take the entire state of your level and just log it. I generally only use this after sessions. Also make sure that if you're connected to source control, that you have checked out and submitted all of your changes.